Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our live chats here on One for Growth. So these chats basically have come about with when I go and I see business owners speaking live at events, and I really like them and think that this should be seen by more people. I invite them on to do a live chat. So I know Debbie through through Cool Story, which is another business you can tell us about that you do as well. But I actually heard you talk at the GGC Business networking event about blogging, which you're going to talk about tonight. And there was so much in it. I took so many notes. And while I do blogs, I literally just do it as a side thing for another post rather than really putting the detail into it that you went into. So it properly shamed me into thinking about it in more detail, which is good. So just a wee bit about Debbie. So we're going to be talking about how to use blogs to drive organic traffic through your blog. So Debbie is a content manager and writer, years of experience in blogging and video marketing. We've worked in a range of industries, helping them grow with online presence and business without using paid ads, which is always a great thing because there's a number of people I've talked to recently who they've either used companies to do paid ads or done it themselves, and it's just not really delivered for them. So any way that any of us can get some extra sales and visibility without spending money is always going to be a winner. So Debbie, how about you just introduce yourself in your words and tell us about your blog writing, but also about Cool Story too, because it's cool.
Okay, so yes, I am Debbie, and as Heather said, I'm currently a content manager. I have been a content writer and manager though for the past, 7 or 8 years or so. I first started in my family business, and we kind of I wrote content, sorry, that didn't particularly work, and we'll get on to why it didn't work to start with a wee bit later on. And then we changed the way that we did things, and suddenly it started to actually drive revenue and make the business money. And since then, I've gone on to work for myself as a freelance content writer and marketer. I now work within a company as a content manager. And I also have a second business, it's my only business now, which is Cool Story Co., which is an insulated wine flask that holds a full bottle of wine and keeps it cold for 24 hours and hot for 12 hours. And we also have some matching tumblers. And I started that with my sister about a year and a half ago. We've got some quite exciting things coming up for that. So yes, my life basically is writing and managing and editing content for businesses.
Excellent. And I can vouch that the flask does work for both hot and cold drinks.
It does.
So, Debbie, I'm going to let you share your presentation and just go straight into it. I'm going to come off the screen until the end. So I'll just take myself off and let you share.
So I'll just take this away. And Heather, can you just confirm you can see the slides and nothing else now?
Yep, perfect.
Excellent. Okay. So at this point, if I was face to face with everyone, what I would usually start by asking is who is already creating content. So raise your virtual hand or just raise your hand in your own house, wherever you are, if you are already creating content. And if you are creating content, think about whether it's working or not. And if you're not creating content, think about why you're maybe not creating content at the moment. Because really, blogging or any sort of long form content, which is, although we're talking about blogging at this point, it's really any sort of long form content. So video, podcasting, anything where you are creating content and sharing it on your website or on YouTube or any sort of place that is driving organic traffic to your website. And ultimately, it's about creating revenue for your business. And a lot of marketing is done because we think that we need to do it as business owners, but really, we don't know whether we're getting anything back for it. And a lot of people create blogs, but the chances are, if you said that you are already blogging and you're watching this, you're maybe not doing it consistently, you're not getting any results out of it, and you're not really sure whether you should continue with it because you're not seeing anything in return. So why would you? Why would you spend your time doing something that's not really working? And so the main question we really want to answer is blogging or any other form of long form content still relevant in 2022 and beyond? And hopefully by the end of this 30, 40 minutes or so, you should have an answer to that. You might already be able to guess what it is based on the fact that I'm doing this. But the question that we really need to ask ourselves is, what does the buying process look like in 2022? And like, think about this from a consumer perspective rather than a business perspective. How do you buy things in 2022? And how will you continue to buy things in 2023? Will you want to buy something and go straight to the shops and interrogate a sales advisor about all the things that you want to know about it? Probably not. That's not really the way that you shop anymore. And it all goes back to these things that we call the traditional moments of truth. So 15, 20 years ago, if you wanted to buy something from the shops, that's exactly what you would have done. You would have probably gone into the shops, you would have spoken to someone, and you would have asked their opinion and their advice on things. And there's these moments of truth that were coined by, I think it was Procter & Gamble, called the first moment of truth and the second moment of truth. And millions of pounds were funneled into these moments. And the first moment of truth was when you went into the store and you had your first impression and you looked at things on a shelf and you decided that's the one that I want. And that was your first moment of truth, where you saw a product or came across a service and decided that that's what you wanted. And the second moment of truth was when you took that product home or you used that service for the first time and you had your initial reaction. Was it a good one? Did you want to go back and get the product again? Or was it a bad one and you never would? And that's kind of how people bought traditionally over the past, since people started buying things, that's how they were buying. And as I said, millions and millions of pounds went into this buying process and into people winning this buying process and making sure that they were in the right parts of the store, that they had the right, they were in the right part of the shelf and things like that. But then something happened that completely shifted the way that we buy things. And when I asked how you buy things in 2022, your first thought was probably, will I Google it? And that's the answer for most people. If you want to buy something, if you think, oh, I'd like to maybe have this, the first thing that you do is you Google it. And this has coined a new moment of truth called the zero moment of truth. And Google did some research on this a few years back now. And the zero moment of truth is basically the moment in the buying process where your customer or potential customer researches the product prior to purchase. So this is happening long before they ever get in touch with you, long before you even know that they exist. Right now, you're researching things probably online. Well, hopefully not right now because you're watching this, but right now in your life, you're researching things that you want to buy, and you've not even made contact with companies yet. You probably don't even know if those companies exist. You might not even know the solution to your problem at the moment. You might just have a problem that you're researching, that you're trying to find the answer and the solution to. And so this zero moment of truth now comes before the purchase, and it's arguably much more important than the first moment of truth. Well, it is more important probably than the first moment of truth. Second moment of truth is obviously still important. We still want them to have a good experience after they've purchased. But if you don't partake in this zero moment of truth, if you don't answer the questions that your customers have, then the chances are they'll never even get to that first or second moment with you. And so we have this figure, which is 70%. And actually, I was at a talk the other night where they said that this is now more like 80 or 90%. But this figure essentially represents the amount of the buying process that has already happened before your potential customer gets in touch with you. So before your ideal customer picks up the phone or emails you or fills in your contact form or does anything else, they've already made 70+% of the buying decision. They already know that they probably want to buy from you or want to buy from whoever they contact. So if 70% of the buying decision is made before they get in touch with you, the question that we really need to be asking ourselves is not, is blogging or content relevant in 2022 and beyond, but are people still researching their purchases? Do people still want to know what the best things are to buy or how much things cost or all these questions that they might have before they buy something? And I think for every industry, the answer is yes, people still are researching. And if they are researching, then have a really honest think about whether you are winning the zero moment of truth. Are you answering the questions that your customers need to know? Are you giving them the information that they need to know before they get in touch with you, before they buy something? And if the answer is no, which it is for a lot of people, because maybe you want them to phone you, maybe you want to have a conversation with them before you give them the answer to these questions, then you really need to consider whether you're even part of the conversation. If your customers are searching for things and you're not giving them the answers, are you stopping them? Are you ensuring that they're going to buy from you? Are you stopping them from buying from other people? Or are you just excluding yourself from the conversation? Are you just removing yourself from the table and the choices that they might make when they're at the point of purchasing? So hopefully anyone that's still watching this has got to the answer of, yes, my customers are still researching in 2022. They will still be researching in 2023 and beyond. And no, I'm probably not winning the zero moment of truth. No, I'm probably not answering the things that my customers really need to know, for multiple different reasons that we'll come on to. So in that case, what should you be blogging about? So I did say I would give you a bit more information on how the blogging that we were doing wasn't working. So I'll go back to the start now and give you a bit of information about how I got started with content. So as I said, I worked for my family business, so worked from them for years and years. And in about 2016, we decided to start creating content. And at the time, it was because we had a new website, and the website developer said, well, you should probably write a blog. And I said, well, no one's going to read a blog. We have nothing to blog about. What would we possibly talk about? And it was a company that built swimming pools, hot tubs, saunas, steam rooms. And no one else in the industry in the UK anyway was creating content. So I thought, well, what would we talk about? So I just started writing whatever I could think about. I talked about the company. I talked about how we were offering finance. I talked about, all these things that I thought were interesting about the company that people would want to know. And we published our first few blogs, and absolutely nothing happened. We didn't get a rush of business. We didn't get loads of people coming in saying that they'd found our blog and they wanted to buy. It was a good thing. It felt like a good thing to do. It felt like something that we should be doing, but we certainly weren't seeing any return on it. And as I said at the start, all your marketing should be bringing you business. It should be bringing you revenue. If it's not, then you're not going to continue with it. If something doesn't make you money, why would you put your time and energy into it? There's so many things in marketing that are drawing our attention away, and in business in general, that you're not going to put time and effort into something that's not working. But we did continue for a wee while. And eventually I came across someone who some of you might have heard of, called Marcus Sheridan, and a couple of other people, Chris Marr, and a couple of other people in the industry, that were all talking about this thing called They Ask You Answer. And they talked about the things that you should be blogging about, and the things within every industry that, regardless of industry, people are searching for. And this is not the most impressive graph, but it does show you how quickly things change. So up until here, where the first kind of big spike is, we were just blogging about whatever came to our minds, not particularly consistently, just whatever we wanted to talk about. And the first spike is actually where we published our first blog and video that comes under what is known as the Big Five, which we're going to go into talk about a wee bit more. And as you can see from there, it just goes up. We started to publish consistently. We started to talk about the right things. And those right things, as I've said, were the questions that people were asking, the things that people needed to know before they bought, rather than just talking about ourselves and awards we'd won in finance that we had and all these things that was not really that interesting to customers. And since then, that has just continued to grow. Worked there for years beyond this, and worked with them for years after that. And the traffic and the leads and all the things that you want to improve have since gone up. And it did make an actual difference to revenue. We started to get customers coming in who had read blogs, who had downloaded buyer's guides, who had watched videos, who already knew the answers to the questions, and who'd self-qualified themselves as ideal customers. So all those things started to happen. So the first exercise, hopefully you've got a pen and paper. Sorry, I should have said this first. If not, something to write down on. But what are the most common questions that you're asked about your products or your services? And whether or not you want to answer these, or they are answered on your website, just write them down. Even if you think, I'm never going to write about these, start to think about what they are. And again, at this point, I'd usually get people to start telling me what the most common questions are, whether or not that's for your business or you as a consumer. What do you always want to know? And invariably, there are 5 that we come to the conclusion for. And these are, as I said, the big 5. And if anyone wants to know, this is obviously a very short presentation. If anyone wants a much more in-depth look into this, and I definitely recommend the book The Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan, which goes into this in a lot of depth. This is just obviously my experience with it. And these big 5 are these. So they're price, cost, problems, comparisons versus, reviews, and best of. And regardless of what industry you're in, we've found that these are the things that people search for. These are the things that people want to know the answer to. And there's much more than this. There's much more that you can blog about once you've completed these ones. And there will be industry specific ones as well that you can find through tools such as like SEMrush or different keyword planning tools and things. But that can all get a wee bit complex. So if you want to get started and you're not sure where to start to think about these 5 topics and what kind of questions will come under each of these. And we will go through each of them individually, because you'll have multiple questions within each of these topics that your customers will need to know the answer to. So price, let's start with that one, because that's always the most contentious. And again, I can't see you all, but think about whether or not you already have your price on your website. And if not, what is stopping you from talking about pricing online? And again, there's almost always 3 answers that come out of this. The first is that your pricing is bespoke, it's customized pricing. Every single person is different. Every single client that you work with is different. And now this might be true, but what we have found is in a lot of cases that's probably not the case, and it doesn't have to be. And you can actually, if you are able to, package things up and have a price for it. But if you can't, that's absolutely fine. We'll go on to how you can still talk about price. It might also be that you're more expensive and you think that will put people off. And again, that might be the case, but why are you more expensive? There's a reason. You're not just more expensive because you want to buy 10 cars and a massive house, or maybe you are, but most likely it's because you add value in a way that other companies don't. So you need to tell people what that is. You need to tell them why you're more expensive. And the third reason is that you don't want your competitors to know, because they might undercut you or know your prices. But do you already know what your competitors charge? I can almost guarantee that you do, or you at least have some idea. So they already know what you charge. So if you're thinking about pricing and you're thinking you can't talk about it at all, yeah, that's fine. You don't have to put on the exact price. If you are bespoke, or there's lots of factors that change the pricing, then you don't need to put on an exact price on your website. But you do need to start talking about pricing. How much is the industry average? What's the low end? What's the high end? What factors are going to push the price up? What factors are going to pull the price down? Not only, as I say, does this allow you to it allows you to get your customers to self-qualify. So if you are really expensive, and someone has, a tiny budget in comparison to what you're charging, do you want to have sales conversations with those people? Do you want to meet them or try and sell to them if you know they're never going to pay what you have because they don't have it to pay? Probably not. So giving them your pricing allows them to qualify themselves, whether or not it's something that is within their range. It allows you to show your value proposition. What is it that you're offering that other people aren't? Why is the pricing different? What are you giving people that other companies aren't? And it allows people to set realistic expectations for the industry, because it's the most annoying thing, as you'll know as a consumer, to go and try and find the price for something and have no idea what it costs. Is it £500 or £5,000? These two things are very different. So you need to start talking about pricing, whether or not you can put it on an exact price or not. It's the most frustrating thing as a consumer to not be able to find pricing at all. And it's the one thing that businesses really dislike talking about. So when we talk about pricing blogs, it could be how much it costs. It could be why you're more expensive or cheaper. It could be running costs, maintenance costs, ongoing costs. It could also be what's the cost of not hiring a service or buying this particular product. For things like coaching, what's the cost of not hiring a coach? You might lose, yes, you spend money, but you might lose, you've got to spend the time then. So there's always a trade-off when you're buying a service or a product. So that's the first one, that's cost. And then we go on to the second one, which is problems. So I want, again, if you've got your pen and paper there, to write down some examples of why people might not hire you. So that might be to do with cost, but it might be to do with things going wrong or things within your industry. It'll be very industry specific and business specific. But think of some objections that you've maybe had recently or reasons that people have chose to buy from someone else. And problems are something that, again, people want to avoid because you don't want to tell your customers or your potential customers what problems they might have with your industry or your service or your product. But the thing is, everybody already knows. Everybody already knows every single service, product, industry has some sort of problem or some sort of objection that's going to come up that's going to stop people from buying. And people love to ignore the elephant in the room, but it is already there. And by talking about it, not only do you give them the answer to the question that they really need before they buy, so you remove that objection and you remove that doubt, but you also build trust because you're willing to talk about something that not everybody is. And problems are something that everyone really shies away from, more so than cost in some cases, because you want to pretend that everything's perfect. And it's absolutely not. So think about, and well, I've already said, like, this one is a cost, but again, a cost could be a problem for some people, not just the upfront cost, but the ongoing costs. What are the most common problems, not just with your product or your service, but perhaps in your industry? Is there something that annoys you? Is there something that you do differently? Let them know. What do you need to do before something's delivered or before the service is bought, or what things do you need in place? You might talk about things like, people might say to you, oh, is it true that this happens in the industry? Talk about those things. Why might not get results? Why might not work? Who might it not work for? Let people know the type of problems that you have commonly here and how you overcome them or how you deal with them. And that, again, will help people. It'll help them self-identify as your ideal customer. If there's something that customers do wrong all the time, not wrong, that's the wrong word, but if there's expectations maybe that are not always met, or sometimes that they've got the slightly high expectations or something like that, then talking about problems can help them overcome these, because they then know what to expect with the product or the service, so that they're getting what they expect. And that's price and problems. And then we go back to comparisons and versus. It's one of the things that, again, you want to know how things compare to others in the industry. And again, people don't want to talk about it necessarily. They don't want to talk about how their product or service compares to someone else's. But again, it allows you to build trust because you're showing an unbiased view of your product or service versus somebody else's. So again, one that I've written myself is freelance content writers versus agency, which is best. Not necessarily about which is best, but they're different, and you need to help people understand what the differences are and which one's going to be better, because we know that our product and service isn't the best for everybody. We know that, and it's just about telling people what circumstances it's going to fit with and what ones it's not. The GGC, the Glasgow Girls Club, versus BNI, two different networking and business groups, two very different ones. So what's the difference, and which one's the best for growing your business? Again, a very personal thing based on who you are, what your business is. Blogging versus social media, two different things, but things that people compare. So it doesn't have to always be like for like. It could be things that people compare within your industry that they think are the same. And it's up to you as the expert to say, well, these two things are often compared. Here's how they actually stack up against each other. Are they actually the same? Are they not? Sometimes they will be. There'll be, two services that offer the same, ultimately, the same outcome, but maybe in a slightly different way. And sometimes it'll be things like blogging and social media, which are both marketing, but both necessary probably, and both very different things. And then we go on to best of and reviews. We usually just bundle together, but best of is fairly self-explanatory. What is the best, or who is the best? And this one's a really fun and clever one, because everybody wants to know what the best is. Everyone wants to know what the best thing is. It's one of the most searched terms. And when you write this sort of blog or you do this sort of video, it's really easy to try and include yourself, because obviously you want to be the best and you want to tell people that you're the best. But if someone's reading this, they're already on your website. So they're already there. You've already won. You've already got them on your website. This is your chance again to say, actually, we're not the best for every situation. And although, obviously we think we're great, there's lots of other people out there that do a really good job. And it's a really good way to shout, to kind of put positivity out there for other groups or other businesses or whatever it might be. and let people know if you're not available, if it doesn't work with you, these are the people that I would recommend, because people always want to know, if I wasn't to work with you, who would I work with? So this is an opportunity to do that. But it also has the added benefit of you're talking about your competitors, which gives you the opportunity to rank for their names, depending on who they are and how big they are and how much content they create themselves. But it is possible in some industries, if you're talking about the names, that when people search for them, they actually find this blog and you can outrank their own website, which is always a really nice thing to happen. But also they like it because they like being included in the best ofs. They like being, being recognised. So it's always a nice positive one to do. And finally, reviews, again, sort of similar, but you could do reviews on other companies or other services or competitors or products, whatever that might be. And again, an honest review of it. You are the expert. You know a lot more than a lot of the people that are going to be your potential customers or customers. It doesn't have to be, I'm not suggesting it would be negative, but an honest look at product, services, whatever that might be. So that is the big 5: price, cost, problems, comparisons versus, reviews, and best ofs. There's also more that you can add in here, like how-tos and what is, which might be relevant depending on your industry. As long as you're not, a lot of times how-tos will capture people that have already bought. So if you're trying to focus on getting leads and conversions, then there may be ones that I would do after you've addressed these problems. So back to, are you winning the zero moment of truth? After seeing those questions, have a really honest think about how many of those 5 different topics you are covering on your website. How many of those questions are you answering? And within each of them, you'll probably have, 5, 10, 20, 30, depending on what type of business that you have. And you can do each of those 5 for each of your different products or services. So if you have multiple, you can go through each different product and service with each of those 5 big 5s and come up with, tens of or hundreds of topics. And if you're not winning the zero moment of truth, then what can you do to change that? Have a look at the questions that you've written down, the common problems that people have, the common questions that people ask, and think about where you're going to start now. What questions are you going to go away and answer after this talk? And again, if there's anywhere for you to type it in. If not, then just make a commitment to yourself to go away and write a list of the questions that you can answer that will help you win the zero moment of truth in your business. And so that's time for questions. That's just where to find me on LinkedIn. My name is Debbie Ekins. I'm Debbie Ekins on LinkedIn, so you'll be able to find me there. And Heather, I think that's me done and ready for questions. Heather, you're muted.
Ran away to myself there.
It's like, what's she gone?
Thank you so much for that. And I think it's quite good we're managing to keep this within the half hour as well, which I never managed to do.
Yeah, sorry, I sped through it, but see, when you've not got people to talk,
there's no interaction. Yeah, that's the problem with being live. You've not got anyone to ask questions or to actually interact with. But there's things that really stood out for me the first and the second time. And one was the price side of things. And actually, I made a decision after last time I heard you to put my prices on my website because for the very reasons that you said. One, as a customer, to go on and not have any idea of what things are going to cost.
Yeah.
You just assume they're going to be really expensive and they're out with your range. So you just go looking elsewhere for somebody that does have it.
Exactly. And also it's like, I personally find it quite an awkward interaction to go and ask someone how much something costs, because sometimes you don't know if you want to buy it yet. Like, you don't know if you want to have that service or that product, but you're trying to figure out, is this something maybe that I could afford? If it's within reasonable budget for me, whatever that might be, do I then want to continue and look more into this? But cost is always the first thing I go to. And then if you go and ask someone, then they've got your details. Are they going to phone you? Are they going to message you all the time? Are they going to annoy you? So from a consumer perspective, to just have the price and then go, okay, I can now make the decision. I'm going to continue researching or not, whatever one it is. And almost always it is, oh yeah, actually I'm going to keep looking into that. But I hate asking people for even,
I know.
I kind of know what it might be. I hate having to go to them and being like, can you just explain what this will be? Because especially if they don't have their prices, you assume that they're then the reason they haven't put their prices on is so they can sell to you when they contact you. And I don't want that. I want to make my decision.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're right as well. There's sometimes where, for one of the reasons for me putting it on mine was because people don't know what prices are for things sometimes. If you've not used a service, then you don't know. So
Exactly.
if you just want to do a bit of research to learn, is this something within your budget? If there's no prices, then it can put you off it completely. And also, for that same reason, if people do ask you the price, you might not be in their budget. So in the nicest possible way, it's saving a lot of time as well.
And yes, absolutely. And sometimes as well, they're just not ready at that moment. But if they have the price, then they know in their head, okay, I know, especially if it's like a business service and someone needs something, they might be like, okay, I know I can't afford this just now, but I now know I'm working towards that, and I would really like to have this service. And especially if people start to talk about, well, this is how much it is, and you're like, well, that's a lot. But then they go into, well, this is why, and this is all the things that we offer for that price. Then you're like, all right, well, that's actually really good. And now you want that. Like by explaining the value, you've created like a want in that person who maybe sort of was on the fence, but now they're like, no, now I'm going to prioritize creating the budget for that. Because a lot of times, again, especially in business, I guess in all business, B2C, B2B, whatever, it's not that they don't have budget, it's that it's not a priority. I mean, sometimes, yes, we won't have the budget, but sometimes it's that they don't think it's important, and it's your job to explain why it's important. And that's why cost blogs or anything to do with cost is so effective, because it explains that without being pushy or salesy. It's just like, well, here's why we charge what we charge. Here's why it's more than some of the other ones you might have seen. And we definitely saw that within my family business with hot tubs specifically, and that we didn't have prices on to start with, but a lot of the really cheap companies did. So they were all giving their prices. So people would come in and they'd be like, oh, how much is your cheapest hot tub? We've seen one online for $2,000. And we'd be like, oh, well, ours start at $6,000 or $7,000. And they'd be like, what? And then we have these long conversations with people, and inevitably they would never buy because they'd already made up their minds that they were going to pay $2,500 to £4,000, and ours started way above that. But we entered the conversation far too late because they were already ready to buy. But then we started to talk about pricing. We entered the conversation far sooner. So although the price was still the same, we kind of readjusted their expectations of what cost would be. So as you say, like, people don't know how much things cost. If they've not bought something before, they've never hired someone for a service before, they have no idea. And that's where we come in and we say, this is what it is. And that's why cost blogs are so brilliant as well, because you can say, like, this is the lowest you'll get, this is the cheapest you'll get, but not everybody wants the cheapest, and this is the highest you'll get, and this is what all the things that these will involve, and this is why it will change. And it allows you to kind of discuss the industry as a whole and insert yourself into where you're at within that and what you offer within that as well. So
yeah,
I love cost blogs.
And I generally think as well that it's okay not to be the cheapest, and it's okay if people want to undercut you, and it's okay if people look at it and go, your competitors look at it and go, I'm going to undercut them. Well, crack on, because they're going to have to do the same work, but
for less money. I always remember someone saying there's no point in being no point in being a busy fool. Like, why would you sell more of something at a much lower like profit margin and not make any money on it when you can do a few more? I mean, obviously it depends on your business model very much, but if people will undercut you, and that's absolutely fine. But also, people don't always want the cheapest. In fact, a lot of times people don't want the cheapest, especially if it's something they really value. Yes, it's like something, that is considered a commodity, but if you show them where the value is and make them understand, like, a lot of people probably think all social media managers are the same. You and I know that that's not the case. A lot of people think that all content writers are the same. So like, well, someone on Fiverr charges £20 a blog, so why is this other person charging £500 a blog? There's no, that they're not the same. We know that they're not a commodity. But if you are not in that industry or you've not worked with one before, how would you know that? So again, it's a good place to show people the difference and what where the value is and what you might be getting for that money, and why someone might not want to hire the cheapest social media manager or the cheapest content writer or the cheapest whatever it is. And most people know that. Like, we all know you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Really. So you're just confirming what they already know.
Yeah. And then it's up to them to choose, isn't it? So it's you having to have that conversation, like you said.
Exactly. And some people will still choose the cheapest one, and that's totally fine. But it's probably going to be one of those clients that would be a hassle anyway, so you probably don't want them.
That's it. There's customers for everyone, isn't there? I think the other thing that is the best of as well, and it's always a difficult one, I think, in that you don't want to. It's not within our nature, is it, really, to shout about how good we are, but doing the best of and that comparison and having the confidence to talk about your competitors and where you rank them, I think is a positive thing to do. And it really allows you to be seen by their audiences, but also you're almost that little step above because you've got the confidence to talk about competition.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I've seen cases before as well where people come and they're like, oh my God, thanks so much for including me. And you're like, yeah, you're welcome. Like, it was for purely selfish reasons, but it's nice for them as well. And as you say, then, yeah, it kind of adds a bit of credibility to you because you're the one ranking them. Or not necessarily like ranking them, but saying like these people are good, or maybe these people we've not saying they're bad, but we've not included. So, take from that what you will. Then you do also sometimes get people who are annoyed that they weren't included in the best of, and how dare you choose the best of? And you're like, well, you have
my opinion.
Yeah, and you also have the same means. Go and do your own. So,
exactly.
but yeah, it's nerve wracking, I think, and I think regardless of if you've never published a blog before, I think regardless of what one you choose, or is that it's nerve wracking to hit publish in the first one. So yes, here.
So Debbie, obviously, like, there's millions of ideas going away from this of what we can actually write and ideas to, give it a go. But obviously, we're not all writers. We're not all capable of doing it. So if people want a blog written or they want more details, what we'll do is we'll tag your details in this post. But what is your advice? Do you know what? If we're just not natural writers, do we just go to the likes of yourself and go, help me?
I think that it depends on budget is honestly probably the answer, because I think that if you don't feel like you're a natural writer, then I probably wouldn't recommend that you go and try and get super cheap blogs written, because there's just quite a few different problems with it. Usually, not always. You might be lucky, but it's difficult to get somebody like you want to write as yourself or as your own business, and you want to have your own opinion and your own point of view, your own tone of voice, and it to feel very like your company. There's no point in pushing out generic mediocre content anymore, because there's something like 4.5 million blogs published a day or something absolutely disgusting like that. So there's no point in writing things that don't rank, that people don't search for. When people search a question, you want to pop up first or second or third, and getting cheap writers probably isn't going to do that. So I'd say if you're a new business, then and you don't have the budget to hire someone, then there are like some courses and templates and things like that you can do. This is nothing to do with me, but I will just shout out to them because they're a really great membership called Make Your Mark Online, with Martin and Lindsay. And they have courses on how to create content and things like that. They have a full membership online, and it's all about content creation. So that's something like, I think I can't remember. I want to say like 50 odd pounds a month, maybe dollars, maybe. I can't remember. I take that back. I have no idea how much. It's a small amount. It's definitely under £100 a month. So if you feel like you can't write, you don't know how to write content, then I think that's a good place to start, is joining a membership like that. They have like challenges as well, and they review your content and stuff like that, and they're really, really great. So if you want to write it yourself, which is sometimes the best way as well, because then it's your tone of voice, you know everything. Obviously it's time, so it's whether or not you have the time. But then, and if you have the budget, obviously you can then outsource to like a content writer if you do have if you maybe got a slightly bigger business and budget to hire someone, but you probably want to do at least, like, I mean, I'd say probably minimum 4 a month, probably realistically more than that. So it depends on what kind of budget you have. If you think that you really hate writing and you don't want to write, then remember, it doesn't have to be written content. I favour written content because I like to write and I like to read. You can do videos. If you really hate writing but you want to communicate the same questions, then get your phone out. It doesn't have to be fancy equipment. Go in nice natural light, unlike this light that's in my room at the moment. Get a ring light if you have one. If not, some nice natural light. Your phone on a tripod, and talk about the questions that your customers will ask, and then you can upload them to YouTube and you can embed them on your website. And if you want, you can then write from there and turn that into content. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be blog. Probably the best case scenario is that you write a blog and then you have a video to go alongside that. But it's time and it's money and it depends on what you want. But yes, so
amazing.
Did I answer the questions?
Thank you so much, Debbie. So if everyone watching either live or on after this, we'll get it onto our YouTube, onto the website, onto our blog, and which hasn't had something on it for way too long. But we'll get this up there as well. With all Debbie's details. If you do need assistance and help with your blog, Debbie's the person to go to. And thank you so much for taking time out on your Wednesday evening.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. Hope it was useful. And any questions, let me know. Thanks.